I've seen archives. I love it. It's one of the companies that you can mention and like. Something good. Being in the moment.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. We are 2 minutes out. Eddie, I don't have to roll call when we have people joining remotely, right?
Only if it's not, if it's unanimous, no.
Okay.
But if it's split vote, yes.
Gotcha. Thank you. I forgot.
The amount of weird tangential technology tidbits I've learned in the past.
Okay.
Plenty to do. Oh, good.
Peter, was Danielle coming in person?
Excuse me?
Was Danielle coming in person?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah. I was gonna meet her here. I'll get up with her. Yeah.
Okay.
Or through. Yeah, Daniel.
Come on.
And Hannah's part of that. And, also invited Kathy Jameson. I don't know if she'll join us, but we sign in.
All right, council, it is 6 p.m. on Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. I will call this regular meeting of the Barre City Council to order. Mr. Manager or council, are there adjustments to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, at the request of the Chair of the Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee, removing item 8G, Chair Mulvaney is sick and wanted to be here in person for this discussion, so she asked that it be rescheduled for a subsequent meeting.
Next meeting?
Yes.
Likely?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much, council. Any adjustments to the agenda? Hearing none, we will move to visitors and communications. Is there anyone wishing to address the council regarding an item that is not on the agenda? Ma'am, you can come right up, have a seat. And if you would, please just state your name for the record so the clerk can record it. Thank you. Shares are a little low. Careful.
I wasn't expecting
Sorry.
that.
They're a bit of a surprise. We're sorry.
Yes, I am Sandra Perry. I reside on Palmisano Plaza. And this is my neighbor Joyce and my husband Bert. And we're here to represent all the signatures I have on these 3 pages of the petition to hopefully make the Prospect Street, Westwood Parkway, and Berlin Street a 4-way stop. Now, some people have heard about this. I know the city manager has, and I had been communicating with them. So we just really think it'd be a great improvement at that intersection. There are many reasons to think that, and we just wanted to present this and show that all of these houses that are highlighted are represented by these signatures here. So there are 3 different things on the petition. The first one is that we want the 4-way stop there, just to make it safer all the way around for everybody. And to try and keep the vegetation growth down that's on both sides coming in and out of Westwood Parkway as much as we can, and to possibly paint a crosswalk between Westwood Parkway and Berlin Street, preferably in the beginning of the summer when people might actually use it more. So those are the 3 items on the petition. And I could get more. I know I could get more in the fact that I have not even knocked on doors yet. This is just meeting people outside all summer. So what are the reasons we want this? Number 1, it is the only exit we have out of that neighborhood. There are approximately 160 homes and condos coming out of that exit all the time, and it's the only exit we have.
Currently, and there's probably gonna be more.
And probably going to be more, exactly. And Prospect Street is a major street coming into the city from a neighboring town. And every other road coming into Barre City from a neighboring town has a 4-way stop that has either 4-way stop signs or traffic lights. This is the only one that does not. And it is used a lot. It is a bypass for people to not have to use the main street. And it connects everything from the south end of Barre to all the amenities and services on the Hospital Hill, the hospital, the shopping, the interstate, everything. And it's like a main thoroughway there, and people travel it that way as well. There is speeding on there, we all know that. It's been observed by the police that speeding is an issue. And there have been many accidents there. I had been informed earlier this year that, I think it was the police chief that looked into that, and he said that there was 1 reported accident in the last several years at that intersection. We know that to not be true, except whatever the word reported changes things, I'm not sure. But he said that accident that was reported was in March. I know and witnessed 2 more since then. And I've heard through the grapevine of 2 others as well. So that would be 5 since March. And the gentleman on the corner, oh goodness, I forgot his last name. He lives right there. He says there are 4 or 5 accidents there every year, always. So he's not surprised by that. So there are a lot of accidents. People speed through there. It's our only exit. There are a lot of houses there. It's not safe. And we just hope that we could get that resolved by getting a 4-way stop. And many people, the very first reply I ever got was, yes, and they just sign it. I mean, it was no questions. Now, as far as taking down the vegetation, something was done with that after it was brought to attention of the city. However, not quite enough probably was accomplished, because we have heard that a private citizen of the neighborhood actually went down and took care of the real problem, the majority of the problem down there since then. So, and again, we know that the police have witnessed and seen that there is an issue there, and even clocked somebody going 56 miles an hour down through there. So it's a problem. We hope to get it resolved. I think a four-way stop would be the simplest, quickest, cheapest, safest way. I know, I have been told that stop signs are not supposed to be used to manage speeding. However, if somebody has to slow down to come to a stop, that's going to eliminate some of the speeding that's going down through there. So we hope that that can happen. So that's what we were asking for, and I can leave these if you want them. We've been waiting all summer. I brought this to someone's attention on June 18th. And Nicholas was informed on June 18th. And I contacted him and Brian again on July 2nd because I had heard nothing. And they responded on July 5th, and I made another inquiry on July 11th, which I have all the copies here, but it doesn't, you know, that all works out in the end. But as of July 13th, Salmon suggested that we wait until fall to address this because of all the other flooding issues and everything. And I think that we have been quite patient in doing that. And we know that things need to be taken care of, but this is one thing we'd really like to have done. So we are asking that that be looked into more, and, you know, get a timeline of what can be done and what can't be done, and just keep us informed of it. So that's what we're asking for.
Fair enough. Thank you. Now, you mentioned you had some signatures there. Did you want to leave those, or did you want to email, whatever you'd like to do, ma'am?
I made copies, so
Oh, you made copies?
I made copies. These are the originals.
Okay.
And they represent all of these houses in the 160, and that's, like I said, I didn't even knock on doors yet. I will if I have to. I don't think I have to, really. I think that, you know, if it's looked at, and like I mentioned, all the four-way stops coming into the city, every single road coming in has either four-way stop or traffic lights, except this one. And it's traveled a lot.
Understood.
Okay. And let's see, is there anything else anything you wanted to say?
Just that we have a number of pedestrians, dog walkers, children on bicycles, also traversing the west, in particular the Westwood Parkway. That's the most, I've been living there for 52 years, so I've seen a lot of change in that time. And it's downright dangerous for these children on that road, and in particular between 5 and 6 o'clock in the afternoon, when everybody's rushing up the hill or down the hill, depending on where their daycare is. And there's no enforcement of the 25-mile zone that they're going way faster than that.
Understood.
So what do you think we can look forward to hearing about as far as this goes?
I can, and Counselor Stockwell has her hand up. I don't know if she wants to go first or if you want.
Sorry about that. Didn't notice that Councilor Stockwell had joined. Councilor Stockwell, did you have something to say?
I just want to say that Brian is aware of this issue and has, last I knew, he was looking into making that happen. So Nicholas probably has a better update than I have.
Yeah, I can provide some additional context. And it's nice to meet you, Sandra, in person. I know we've been emailing for a while now. It's nice to put a face to the name. So, yeah, Brian's been looking at this. You know, I just want to, you know, make sure council's aware that when he's evaluated this issue, it's not, he's looking at it on very objective data, right? He's looking at the MUTCD, which I'm looking for the Brian, you probably, municipal, manual. It's the standards used for traffic control, right? So this is not a, this is not a subjective look at, we're looking at it based on standards that are included in that manual. Sandra was correct that, as Brian mentioned when we had these conversations, that stop signs are not, should not be used for speed control. And there are standards in that manual for when a stop sign may be appropriate. And so those are some very objective measures. Again, it's when there's an annual average daily traffic count exceeding 6,000 cars. This intersection does not meet that standard. This intersection has, VTrans data shows that it's about 2,500 cars per day. 3 or more correctable crashes within 12 months. Sandra referenced what the chief shared, which was that they had 1 reported accident. Again, Sandra, I don't know if reported or not has a different meaning, but the standard says correctable. That's something we can look at.
I
But-
just cannot believe
Yeah.
it's been 1 in several years. We
Yeah,
attest
I'm
to
not-
witnessing more than those.
I'm not contesting it. I'm just saying that there may be a difference between what a reported incident, it may be that some of them don't get reported to police. It's that simple. But anyway, the standard is a correctable crash within 12 months. And then limited visibility, which Brian worked, the obstructions that are on the site are on private property. So the city, if this was city property, we of course would take care of it and handle it. Brian worked with the property owner who did do some clearing and I believe was gonna continue to keep that area clear. So, so inserting a stop sign here would be, would be going against, the manual for these types of decisions that municipalities are instructed to use. Now, not to say that there's issues, I know we have speed issues throughout the city. I'm just saying that when Brian looks at this issue, he's looking at it with very objective data. It's not a rejection for rejection's sake. It's how do we measure and make a decision based on the standards that are provided for decisions like this to be made. So just for that, just want to have the council to have that context that there's a rationale for the decision based on objective measures that are quantifiable.
And so where does common sense come into that? And I wonder, do we have to follow that to the letter? And then my question also would be, it would be hard for me to believe that that intersection has less traffic going through it than the 4-way stop that comes in on Maple Avenue, Warren Street, where there's a 4-way stop. I'm questioning that. And does it really matter if it's a problem? If it's dangerous and it's a problem and there are accidents, does it really matter that a 4-way stop would help?
It may. It would be a divergence from, it would open it up to where do you then draw the line, right? Like if we follow the standard, it's easy. You follow the standard. If there's another neighborhood with another issue, may be very well intentioned, may not be a beneficial action to follow, right? We can still go back to, well, let's follow the standard, right? So that's, your question is the right one. It's on the other hand, for decision, policymakers and, the folks who sit up here, it's, do you make an exception once and do you then have to make it again, right? So following the standard is always the safest course. I don't think anyone's gonna put us in MUTCD jail. But again, it's an easy way to be consistent in the decisions that are made by municipality and to have those decisions be fair and be judged on a fair basis when they come to us. So you're right. Right, Brian? I don't think anyone's going to take away your degree or license. It's basically, it allows us to evaluate these types of decisions on a fair, objective manner, so that when they come to the city, we can say we are evaluating them in the same way every time. So that's the only, you're right in that regard.
Well, then I guess I would just say that following the book so that you don't make exceptions, it's hard to understand why this intersection would be the only exception of those roads coming into the town without some.
And I'm wondering, does Hill Street have one?
Yes.
It does? I don't-
Hill
I think
Street
down at
has one at
Liberty.
the intersection of Washington
At the
Street
stoplight.
or Route 302.
yeah.
You know what I'd like to do, ma'am? I mean, we've heard a snippet, so to speak, from the city manager. Obviously, he's looking, we have a public works engineer. What I'd like to do, Brian, if you could, or if it wouldn't be too much trouble, is have you issue a complete report. Let us know what you've done, what you've looked at, so we can understand that, so that these folks have that as well. And then what I'd like to do is put this back on the agenda, because this was an unwarned item, and there may be other folks who have interest who might wish to attend. Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, if you do that report for us, that would be wonderful, but I can think of other instances in the city where I don't think they have that, there's that much traffic and there are stop signs. So have we made this exception in the past, and why have we done that? And so my
Well,
curiosity
that's
is,
what I was going to ask, because
Yeah.
I can think of two right off the top of the head, right off the top of my head, because there are places where, well, I used to drive down Air Street.
Circle Street.
Now it's the Air Street to nowhere, so I don't go home that way anymore.
Exactly,
And then the other one was Hill Street, when we placed a stop sign there. So we have, in fact, in the past, and if the answer is, I'm sorry, Councilor Stockwell, did you still have your hand up?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to confirm what Sandra was saying, that I know there have been 2 accidents there this summer. When I was walking there, I saw them. So maybe they weren't recorded, but there were certainly accidents because there was police cars and there was damaged vehicles. And I tried driving around there and I couldn't see easily in either direction. So I think it's well worth getting a full report on, but I also think I don't know what harm it would cause to have stop signs there. And there used to be a crosswalk that did go across Prospect Street. Not that people actually stopped, but it was, maybe they paused. So I think those things would be useful. And, the likelihood is there's going to be more traffic there, not less. So I think it would be well worth doing a study, but I also think it would be well worth just putting the stop signs up. Unless there's some great harm.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree, but, I would like to have the advantage of additional data in front of me if this is going to be, a council-level decision or a staff decision that the council is going to have to either support or not support. I'd like to have additional data obviously, the city is looking to support the Prospect Heights development. So I don't know, Brian, if you'd want to make assumptions based on that, saying, assuming X number of homes, we've got that baseline data, with X number of homes, we could anticipate X number of trips up and down Prospect Street daily, and perhaps include that in as well. But I think that would give, like I said, I don't have any
like some
information
movement
on
on
this.
it at least.
Councilor Wozniak?
Yes, so this isn't directly related to the stop sign, but I've been working with the manager on a different constituent who's concerned about how much time there is to cross streets and traffic lights. And so we're doing a study about that. And I'm wondering if a good way forward on this could be including looking into this and what different, if it's not a stop sign, what is it? That can, again, common sense says just throw up a stop sign. I agree with you there. But the folks who do this for a living might have other suggestions on how to, or what other tools might be available. So throwing that into that study could also give us good information.
Councilor Guston?
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question, which is, it sounds to me like your biggest concern around this is speeding. Is that an accurate understanding?
Just the safety of it
It's
overall,
safety.
speeding
You
is,
couldn't get out of there.
yeah, it's,
And even the city signs on Prospect Street, while they were off the road, the poles had been lit so that the sign part was blocking the view to go down Prospect Street the whole summer. So even when the foliage got trimmed, we still had these signs that were, this is a crest of a hill right there coming off Jake Street. And people come up that and bat through there, and these signs were in the way as well. And additionally, I just want to say one more thing, is when I first moved there in 1972, I believe it was, there was a flashing red light at that intersection. And that was before Countryway, before Palmisano Plaza. and there was a lot less traffic at that point.
Amy Galford?
Thanks. I was just wondering about process for this kind of thing. It sounds like we're trying to be fair about how this is applied, and there is supposed to be a Transportation and Public Works Committee. So I know the Transportation Committee used to take these kind of issues about 5 years ago. Some of us brought some things about Berlin Street to that committee. I think the committee has been inactive for lack of a quorum. I had mentioned at one meeting being willing to join it, but the manager thought I would be disqualified because of my day job. So I'm just curious about process, what the best way is for these kind of issues to be brought.
Yep, you want to speak to that, Nicholas? We could
Yeah,
refer it.
I mean, we
It would
could,
just prolong it.
there's no committee now. I think there's a couple of applicants. We're looking to do a new round of appointments in October to get those on the council calendar. We sort of wait till we get a cluster of people in so we can do some interviews at once. So that would, the committees are advisory, so I think something like this would eventually, if there's sort of a disagreement on way forward, we would come back to the council. But yeah, that would probably prolong it longer is my guess, because we'd have to do an appointment. The committee would have to do a meeting and study up on the issue. So this is probably a faster approach anyway to get some sort of resolution one way or the other.
So, council, is there any objection to proceeding how with including Councilor Wozniak's suggestion that we proceed that way? Oh,
Councilor Chambel just
I'm
raised her
sorry,
hand.
Councilor Chambel. Oh, you're on mute, Councilor Chambel.
I can really do this.
There you go. You're good.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure that we set a good date for this, that we don't kick it down the road and kick it down the road, that we try and put a date sooner than later on it.
No, I was going to ask the manager and the engineer if 6 weeks would be sufficient, only because council doesn't meet every week. So we'd have, we'd allot some time during a regularly scheduled council meeting, no more than 6 weeks from tonight. That would give the engineer and the manager time to give the city council the data they need, give you the opportunity to submit any more data. And what I'm most interested in is the only place where there's been a little bit of discrepancy is the reporting of accidents. And I'd like to know exactly
Yeah, I
what
do
that
have a
discrepancy
question
is. I
about-
don't understand it. I understand the system, and I understand that not every incident makes its way to the traffic data that we get access to. But
Yeah,
there,
that has to be true because.
Not every
we
driver has
witnessed it.
insurance, and lots of times
Yeah.
they'll just go away rather than
sure,
put in that position.
But
right. But we can figure out that discrepancy, and
Besides the
it
one
may
in
be a
March.
simple matter of definition
Yeah.
and what rises to the level of the V-Trans retained information, so.
I can't imagine the two since March that I've actually witnessed, where the police and the fire truck can't be reported. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and it could be a simple mistake
Yeah.
in pulling it up. It could be a question of intersection, could be a lot of things, but I think giving us this time will give the city opportunity to respond, give you the opportunity to review the responses, and then we can talk about it and see if we can reach resolution. I mean, like you, we want everyone to be safe.
Yes.
The no-brainer seems like, the crosswalk with some if you got 160 homes in a neighborhood and they're crossing that, there should be a crosswalk. So,
It is the largest neighborhood
Mhm.
that has only one exit in the whole city. So,
yeah,
and it's growing and, yeah, so, yeah.
those are all compelling
I have
statistics.
just one question about how does the state count the traffic going through? How is that? There isn't a car counter there that,
I could guess that it's,
I think what they do is every so often, they have a consultant that comes in and you'll see the cars stop by the road and they'll make it. So those counts they do are probably on a periodic basis. To do that, they don't have, they might install those counters or they'll have a consultant do it, but they're probably every 5 years or
Yeah.
use something on some type of schedule.
I would venture to say that I have seen those people sitting there doing that,
I have too.
but it's been quite a while, and I would also venture to say it's been before COVID.
Yeah.
So, and
Great
the
little job
floods,
for high
and the
school
floods.
kids.
The floods changed traffic in the city a little bit. People
Okay.
didn't necessarily go down Barry Montpelier Road, they go up the hill and over. So
Yeah.
it's a problem, and we hope to
Understood.
get it fixed.
So hearing no objection from council, that's how we're going to proceed. If you wouldn't mind, ma'am, handing your signatures and that information to the clerk, we'll get them entered into the record.
No objection, but if I just may add one small thing. From what I'm hearing, speeding is a top concern. So I would appreciate if that report can handle not just should or should there not be a stop sign there, but if the decision is no stop sign, what other actions can be taken at that spot to slow traffic down? Because there's a huge menu of different options, and I don't know what might be suitable for that spot, but there may be other options.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Watch the step. Watch the step. I've seen
Thank you.
a lot of people not pay
Thank you
attention.
for coming in.
Okay, is there anyone else wishing to address the council under visitors and communications? Yes, Burn Rose.
Hi, thank you. There we go. So thank you to the woman who just presented. I live on Allen Street, and Allen Street ties into Prospect Street, so maybe people could take a look at that because we have about 75 or 80 houses coming down and tying into Prospect Street. And we have tried for a number of years to get a crosswalk because cars play chicken with people in baby carriages and folks trying to cross the excessively long space that we have. That's not why I raised my hand though, but I just wanted to comment that maybe we could include what's happening at the Allen Street and Prospect intersection when you're looking at the one at Berlin. I reviewed the video from the last city council meeting, and I had a concern about the ARPA funds going to repair the, oh gosh, it's not a carburetor. Well, sorry, I can't remember. At the manifold, thank you. Phew. And I wondered, is that decision final now? Can I ask that question?
Of course.
Is that a done deal, Nicholas?
As far as I can tell, we got council approval for it.
Okay. I really appreciated Councillor Spalding's questions about the use of the BOR, the future expenses, who actually really pays for it. That's a lot of Barre City funding going into the BOR that is used by the community. And I would urge the city to find a way to maybe collect more funds from neighboring towns. And I would also, I hear every time the BOR gets brought up in terms of spending more funds there, that it brings commerce into downtown Barre. And I would like to see some statistics about how much commerce that actually happens. That's what an anecdotal thing to me, but I haven't heard about what does it actually do for Barre City. And if Barre City's funding it, we need to have a big payback. We just had 4 school budget votes, and that is an amount of money that our school budget certainly could have used. And that's money that we're spending on other people's recreation besides people that live in Barre City. But it is a privileged group of people that are able to afford and access hockey. We have school sports that we pay for in our school budget. And I would in the future like to see some of that when it's not our school budget, but that as a city, we consider what are we also spending in our school, because our school makes athletics available to all students, whereas what happens at the BOR is not available to all students, is only available to paying students. So that's just my thought on it. And I'm sorry that I've not been well enough or been away and unable to participate, but I've been trying to watch some of the past videos and find out what's going on. So thank you all for your work and your consideration. And have a good meeting. I'll be listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council under visitors and communications? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. Council, we have the approval of the minutes of the meeting of September 10th, 2024. I believe you did send us a list of permits and licenses for approval. Okay, so you had that in your packet, but I'm going to ask you to read them.
Sure.
Just to get them in the record.
Sure. Entertainment license for Jonathan for Barre. He'd like to host an event in Courier Park on October 19th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. This has been approved by Chief Vale. Brian Baker has signed off on his role in it, and Tom Baker from Facilities has signed off on that one. Vehicle for hire. We have 2 drivers that have applied. Melissa Tobin Davis and Gregory Davis. They both have the police chief approval. They have done the background checks. They have done their insurance proof. They also have 1 vehicle. This service is going to be called 802 Community Angels. We have 1 catering permit to be the Woods Lodge LLC at Vermont Granite Museum, October 5th. And we have 1 new liquor license, which was approved by Chief Vale at the last minute. This is for Aranda's Mexican Cuisine, which is in the same building, 377 North Main. I'm not sure what the prior business was, but it's going to be selling the Mexican food as well as tobacco, tobacco substitutes, and beer and wine.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any contracts?
No contracts this week.
You do not. Okay, and item D on the agenda, so there are no contracts. Council authorized the First Amendment to the letter of intent with DEW Construction for the Seminary Street Housing Project. So is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Moved by Councilor Deering, seconded by Councilor Wazazak. Is there any discussion? Yes.
Under the minutes, on page 3, D, the first reading that was warned for the minimum housing ordinance modernization, there's no indication that there was a motion and that we approved that. So that should be added, especially since it's a first reading.
There was.
No, I know there was.
Yeah.
I know. I think I'm just asking Cheryl.
Yeah,
if she
I
could
don't
just
recall.
go back and find it.
Yeah.
I apologize, I don't recall who.
I
Yeah,
don't either.
We'll make that correction.
Yeah, so, and most other things, I'd be like, okay, no problem, but since it's a first reading, it
Right.
really probably should be in there.
Yep, you're right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. Motion is approved unanimously. Item 4A, council is to approve the city warrants. We're ratifying the warrants from September 18th, 2024, and we are approving the warrants from the week of September 25th, 2024. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It is moved,
Second.
oh, it's all over the place. It was moved by,
Executive.
I could accept your motion as a second, Councilor Stockwell? Then it was moved by Councilor Gusson, seconded by Councilor Stockwell. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those
Aye.
opposed, your abstention is noted.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm actually going to skip down because we're way past our second reading warrant, 610. I always, when that happens, I do watch the audience. I do watch the screen to make sure that no one's dropped off. They have not, so, but I would like to move on to item 8A, which is the second reading. It was warned for 6:10 PM. It's now 6:37 PM, and it was, this is ordinance 2024-02, the minimum housing ordinance modernization. So is there anyone wishing to speak to this issue? Okay, is there a motion to approve this? And, well, it would be, this would be adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. That was approved unanimously as well. And we will move back to item 5 on the agenda, and that is to the city clerk and treasurer's report.
So on September 17th, the Barre Unified Union School District budget finally passed. 1,802 yes votes, 1,321 no votes. So from this point forward, we have a 30-day grace period from that date to finalize the final tax bills, once we do determine the tax rate with NEMRIC, our, I don't know, I'm lost for words, software, software people. And as we're going to move forward to the general election, the ballots for the general election are being mailed out by the state of Vermont, and they have started as of Monday. We've actually received 2 back to our office. So please allow through the first week of October to determine whether you have received yours or not. We understand that maybe you did not get a corrected address into the system prior to the time the state pulled the information, which was September 3rd. So give us that time and then contact us for a ballot to be mailed out to you. Just know you will have to sign an affidavit that you did not receive a ballot by the state of Vermont. And just remember, all ballots can be returned through the mail. They can be returned directly into the clerk's office during normal working hours, or be placed in one of our ballot boxes, one in the front, right of the main doors, and then one in the back. And that is where we are.
Thank you very much. Today is your birthday.
It is.
Can we sing happy birthday?
One short of the big 60.
I know not to ask that question.
Oh, I'm
So
fine
let the
with
record
it.
reflect, I didn't,
I'm totally
I didn't
fine with
ask.
it.
Has anyone sung happy birthday to you today?
Yes, yes, the office, yes, the office.
Okay, so
My
we'll-
mother
all
came
right.
in and sang.
So
and,
we'll,
yeah.
it's just a personal belief that
And
everyone.
Tess sang to me,
All
she
right,
actually
everyone
sings quite
should
well.
Get a
She had
birthday
really
serenade
sweet
on their
version
birthday,
of it.
so I'm rather thankful that someone else covered that.
Right.
We won't have to, so, but happy birthday to
Thank you
you.
very much.
Okay, do you have anything under liquor and cannabis?
Oh, I did say that prior, the liquor
Okay,
license.
so you do
for-
not, so nothing under liquor and
No,
cannabis?
no, no, I do.
Oh, you did.
I'd state, I kind of put it in with my,
Okay, so we'll
Licenses and
consider
permits.
liquor and cannabis control, our liquor board in session, and your license approval is, because we can't mix the two. We
Correct.
need a separate.
okay.
And that
so,
was a license for,
Arianda's Mexican Cuisine at 377 North Main Street. It's a second-class liquor license with a tobacco and tobacco substitute rider with it. It has been approved by Chief Vale.
thank you. A motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Okay.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion is presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Mr. Manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple updates for the council and the public. Just a reminder, the FEMA Disaster Recovery Center is still open at the Odd. It has reduced hours. It's now 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And still encourage people who need assistance with their FEMA recovery to go talk to a real-life FEMA person up on the hill. You may have seen this, it was covered by the Times-Argus, but the Vermont Coyotes are coming to Barre next fall. This will be our very own American Basketball Association team. We'll call Barre home, which means a minimum of 10 home games starting next October at the auditorium. So really looking forward to having professional basketball back. I wasn't here when the Frosties played, but I heard that they had quite a following, and so I'm looking forward to experiencing that back on the best basketball court in the state, frankly. And that does mean, sadly, there will be no Martin's home games this year because of market exclusivity rights, but we are very happy that we will be having a full-time team starting next season. Council emailed you this afternoon with hydrology study estimates that were received from our river program partners. And the council, as you recall, had allocated up to $80,000 in ARPA funding for this. The estimates came in significantly higher. It was 165 for just a full hydrology and 95,000 for sort of a storm drain, a stormwater study, a more specific targeted stormwater study. So no action tonight. We're all still evaluating what we received, but this will be an agenda item for the next meeting. We'll work on some options for you to consider our next steps forward. I did have some back and forth with the consultants, and they do recommend, they do suggest that the full-blown hydrology study, if we were to pick just one, is the one that matters the most. So that would be a delta of about $80,000. But anyway, nothing to act on tonight. We'll have more information for you at the next meeting to figure out how we proceed on that. Very good news from the state that we received notice of award for $900,000 for the elevation money that was in last year's budget. So this is very exciting to know how much we have and how to get moving with this process. Our award, so we have $900,000 total for Barre City. Each elevation is capped at $300,000, so there'll be a minimum of 3. Obviously, if there's some elevations that come in lower, they may be stretched. But at least 3 elevations. We have been, Janet and I have been teaming up to have an intake on elevations for residents who we know to be interested in this. And we will be coming back to you as soon as next week with a process to get that rolling, so we can set some parameters about how, we will select who was awarded this funding. There's last check, I think we had at least 12 intakes. So I think, as we've talked about, there'll be some people who get the funding and many who don't. So we'll have to figure out some objective standards for how we allocate those funds, and we'll come back to you with some ideas about how to do that. And then very happy to welcome another member of the team as we got council approval to post a special projects and grants coordinator position, and we have hired Nancy Lynch, and she will start on September 30th. So this is, as I mentioned, ARPA funded position. It's guaranteed through December 31st of 2026. And we designed this position to help address our bandwidth issues here at City Hall. So Nancy knows she's going to be taking on, very small projects to bigger projects. It's sort of a whole range of things. It's really anything that will help our department heads focus on the things that we want them focused on, which are the big picture policy, big scale projects. So she has really broad experience. She's worked the halls of the legislature. She's worked in state government. She's been a leader at nonprofits, so she knows the grant world. She's, and as a nonprofit, if you've worked in a nonprofit, you know that, when you're the executive director, you do the little things and the big things. So she's ready for that whole gamut of the job description. So we're very happy to have her starting and be part of the team. So that's it from me.
Fantastic. Councilor Deering?
I just had a question, but he answered it. I will
perfect.
say that I've heard good things about Nancy.
Yeah. So, because it's so important, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'd just like to have each of you react. I know how I reacted when the manager said that and keep in mind, when our consultants were here, I looked right at them and said, this is nothing we're going to hold you to. And we approved an $80,000 estimate that has since turned into a $250,000 estimate. So I spoke with the manager about this today, thought about it for a while. My initial reaction is, it's so important to do both, that, as we're making decisions about buyouts and flood mitigation, and I know all of you expressed concern about, well, what are we doing for neighborhoods? Well, if you don't have the data to tell you how the stormwater flows and what the hydrology studies are and which neighborhoods are at risk, well, you can't really make good decisions without data. And so, my thought would be to ask whether there is some immediate funding, even funding that would require, say, a 50% or even 75% match, to ask that question. But if the answer to that question is no, I personally would like to continue forward with those studies, because I just think, they're the stepping stone and they're so important. That's my initial reaction. I don't know if any of you would like to react. If you don't want to, that's Councilor Deering.
My immediate reaction was that this is what we need to do. that we need a path forward for our city with data-driven solutions and knowing what is going to happen when the water flows. Because like you said, if we buy properties out that don't make sense, it's just wasting our city's money. And we have to be really good with our community's money. There's not a lot of it there. Our people work very hard for that, and we want to make sure that we're really being good stewards of that money.
Councilor Augustine?
I would be interested in seeing a sort of scope of work on the stormwater study. I think I'm absolutely on board, and I know we need the hydrology study. I am curious exactly what will be covered in the stormwater study and whether that is most useful at this moment in time, or whether we could look at like next year's hazard mitigation grant funding for a stormwater study. I would be curious to hear their opinion on it, if one logically comes before the other. I know that you'd said that they had recommended the hydrology study. Fully on board with we have to do both of them. I'm just curious what we can juggle.
Good thoughts. Councilor Wazak?
Yeah, I agree with asking for as much funding as possible, because God knows we need the financial help, and also we have to do both of them, and we can't wait until next July to get the ball rolling, so.
Councilor Stockwell?
In 2.1 for create a model, it covers 100 to 200 square miles. Is that correct? Am I getting that right? Or acres?
The area of the city?
Oh, no, it's more than the area of the city to map out the Stevens branch.
And I
It's
think,
larger.
yeah, I think they also map out some of the, you're talking about the stormwater
No, I'm
study or
talking
the
about the hydrology study.
hydrology? Yeah, they map the area tributaries, the contributing tributaries that come into the city as well. So
Yes,
it's not,
I understand. What I'm wondering is if other towns might want to participate in this that are affected. Since they're going to scope out a large area, does Berrytown want to participate, which would, and therefore give us some money?
no, good idea.
Montpelier might be an easy lift.
Yeah, I agree. Thank
Councilor
you.
Sean Bell?
I agree with everything that's been said, and I really like the idea of inviting other towns to help pay. So, yeah, I'm in for both. I think it's invaluable. We've reached a point that we really shouldn't move forward too fast unless we know what we're dealing with under the ground.
And even if, yeah, your suggestion, Councilor Stockwell, was interesting, because even maybe we could simply make other towns and cities or neighboring towns and cities aware that we're going to be doing this, and to the extent that they're going to be, to the extent that the consultants would take some of our data that we've paid for and then work it into another municipality's study, perhaps if they knew other municipalities were interested, even if it's an independent study, the fact that some of our data would be used to support another municipality's study might cause the price to go down a little bit. So I think it's a great suggestion. There's probably a couple of ways to ask it. So thank you for that. Okay, thank you. Appreciate you reacting to that, Council. Any other questions for the manager? Okay, then we're going to get back on track. We'll move to 8B on the agenda, which is the report from the River Access Task Force cleanup. Welcome. How are you? Watch the chair. You sink way down. You know, they just like, they just.
They're made for very tall people.
I'm not sure who they're made for, honestly.
So thanks for having us here tonight. We appreciate it. My name's Danielle Zarski, and I'm the chair of the River Access Task Force. And Peter Anthony, also, who's one of our members, is going to be talking today. For those of you who don't know, the River Access Task Force came to being about 2 years ago. It was part of the All In for Barre effort, where the city identified 3 different priorities, and one of those was river access. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is just to engender celebration, education, and collaboration moving forward and to the work that we're doing. So Nicholas has a presentation up to share, and I wanted to take some time to say we had other than our volunteers, we had 2 community partners who have been really, really important to the work that we've been able to do thus far. And that's the Friends of the Winooski River and also the Vermont River Conservancy as well. So thank you. And I think there are a few other board members here tonight on the call. So I wanted to thank them as well. And Jim Deschler too is on our board. So you can go to the next slide. So on September, a couple weekends ago, we cleaned up parts of the river in Barre City. I'm sure after the flooding, we all kind of were able to see the amount of sort of garbage, refuse, all these different things that ended up flowing down the river during the flooding. And even before that, there was, there's stuff that ends up in our rivers, and there's like multiple ways it gets there. So this particular weekend, we had beautiful weather. We were lucky enough that the flows were down, because this is really a big deal when we want to do river cleanups. If the flows are too high, we can't get into the river, it's unsafe. And that was the case last year. So we were really lucky, even though we'd had a rainy summer, that we had a number of weeks where the water flow was able to get down. So we were allowed to have this, and the weather was great because it was warm. So we had about 23 volunteers join us for the day. I want to say that this is actually very difficult work. Getting into the river is hard because, as you all know, our river is very incised. It has very high walls. And so even getting into the river is difficult. And then once you're in the river, walking around in the river is also very hard. Lots of rocks. There's a lot of algae in the river this year as well. So it makes walking really hard. And then you're carrying trash and buckets and things like that. So I just really want to say that the folks who come out to do this are really committed to getting there and doing that work, because it's pretty dirty. So we have the 3 partners, the task force, the Friends of the Winooski, and the Vermont River Conservancy. I wanted to give a shout out to our shuttle driver, Bern Rose, who I think talked earlier. And so she was out kind of picking people up as we finished our work and getting them back to their cars. That equates to about 70 hours of volunteer time that we had for that 3-hour time. We had 4 river cleanup sites, so I'll talk to you about those. We had 4 overflowing canoes. If you know anybody who has any aluminum canoes or old canoes that they want to donate for the day to do this work, we would love to have more canoes next year. So we had 4 total, but we could have probably filled up 8 easily. We had about 24 plus full 5-gallon buckets of trash, and then we had 7 pickup sites. And I'm saying we have 7 pickup sites because I just want to, we don't have any pictures, but the city staff went and picked up that trash and hauled it for us, which is huge because not all communities do that. And I just really want to highlight how unique that is and how much we appreciate it, and also the community appreciates it.
Next slide.
Yeah. All right, so river cleanup sites, we had 2 sites on the Stevens branch. So one was the waterfall that's upstream of Mill Street, and then they went down to EF Wall. So it's a pretty short section, but they had a lot of stuff. Our other site was Granite Street, so where the bridge is. We started from under the bridge there, and we went down to Nativity Playground. And then the next site was on Jail Branch, and so we started at Spalding High School and went down to Cumberland Farms for that site. And then the last site was Rotary Park, and that was basically the path all the way down to the waterfall swimming area and then cleaning up around there. And go to the next slide. And so now I'm going to share some photos with you. So this is our Rotary Park site. This site was adopted actually by my family members. My sister was up with the kids this weekend, so they went down to the site and they cleaned up, and there was a lot of trash down there. And the kids were actually able to swim and play in the water after they were done, which is really awesome. We have a hardy family. They're not afraid of getting dirty. So Stevens Branch, this is the upstream of Mill Street site to EF Wall. So we had about 4 people on this site, and there was a lot of trash there. So the waterfall you can kind of see behind the women with the canoe in front of them is one of the areas that I think they're going to do the dam removal above that site. And so there's a beautiful waterfall there. Amanda Garland lives near that site, so she was able to bring people down from her property to get there, and they waded down to EF Wall. So as you can see, there's a lot of metal debris. There's a lot of debris from like old pipes and like a few tires here and there, apparently not as many as Montpelier has, and so maybe that's because of the tire pickup that we do, possibly. And then there was, you know, a lot of plastic. There's just always a lot of plastic. So as you can see, they filled up their canoe and dumped those out at the site, and they got picked up. So you can go to the next slide. So the Stevens Branch, Granite Street to Nativity Playground, there was a lot of garbage and refuse along this section. We were able to get down underneath the Granite Street Bridge, but then other than that, the banks there are like really, really high. But it's right next to Desero Machine Shop, which I think is one of the potential buyout sites. So that's definitely one of those sites that we could have a better access and maybe not so steep up to the river. And so you can see I think we had 3 bikes at this site. Whenever you're in the river in Barre City, you will always find granite markers of some kind. So that's always kind of really fun to find. And so we picked up tons of, you know, bag trash, lots of metal scrap. We actually found, it looked like one of the sides to one of those, it was like, you know, the Frito-Lay truck that, you know, everybody saw. So it looked like a side of one of those trucks that was close to Desero. And I think Michelle Braun, who's the director of the Friends of the Winooski, was going to call to see if they could get that removed, because you could probably get it right from Desero. But we also had like the part of the door that rolls, you know, that has the wheel, like that bottom part we picked up and put into the canoe. And so we were only probably able to pick up like half the stuff along that stretch, but most of it I think was from the flooding, because in the past we hadn't had as much garbage to pick up. So you can go to the next site. So this is Jail Branch to Spalding High School to Cumberland Farm. So we usually do this site. This is a site we do a lot on Boynton Street. We go down there. A lot of trash actually blows from Cumberland Farms. And one of our board members, I think, contacted them to sort of ask them about like how they manage their trash and making sure they had the covers on the dumpsters and didn't let it overflow, because it ends up in the river there. And I think they were fine with doing that. We did find this old wheel that you can see on the bottom right corner that weighed a lot. It was primarily made of wood and steel, it looked like. Does anybody have any idea what it could possibly have been attached to?
A wagon.
A wagon? It looks like that. I figured it was some like industrial piece of something, but really, yeah, really cool. It'd be interesting to find that out. So we had a good group there, again, like just totally filled up that canoe and all their buckets and probably had room for more. You can go to the next one. So again, I just want to thank the volunteers that came out, and the city staff always has just been super supportive of this, and it's been really awesome. And I want to say too that we have 2 grants that the Friends of the Winooski River has been able to get to help us do our work. One is as a liaison. They have a staff who can work as a liaison to help us accomplish some of the goals that we have in our strategic plan, which we create every year. And then the other one is actually to do scoping for river access and connectivity to sites. So Peter's going to talk a little bit more about that and how we can sort of collaborate moving forward.
Yes, thank you very much. I joined the task force very gladly because my kids really enjoyed access to the river in their youth. And unfortunately, because of the pattern of wall building around the city, there aren't too many places where young people can safely actually enjoy the river. So my emphasis here in supporting the scoping study also dovetails with my personal experience of being flooded out and trying to push for increased resilience. I think there's an overlap. In other words, I bet that in the sites that we will eventually, or our scoping folks will at least identify as potentially safe entry points for kids and adults, will turn out, if they're developed, to also have a resilience benefit to the community. Because one of the things that an access point will do is get rid of a wall or widen the river, deepen, if you will, that section, allow the placement of some blocks like has been recommended to take some of the force of a high water flow away and reduce some of the erosion that necessarily happens when water moves very swiftly down a narrow channel. We will essentially create some basins along the way, I think, in the process of identifying those sites, whether they coincide with ones that are obviously on the table already, like at Granite Street and Deseros, or down closer to my old home, remains to be seen. But the point is, everybody who has talked to us about river hydrology and river behavior says what you want is those intermittent basins where you could actually place some impediments to slow the water down and remove some of the aggressiveness and erosion potential of the water. Those will, I think, overlap with the idea of entry points that are safe. So there might be a flood and resilience benefit to our work as ancillary, but it may turn out to be as important as creating the recreational opportunity. We'll see, but I'm hopeful that that will happen.
Thank you. Questions from anyone? Well, thank you. And thank you for leading and being such an enthusiastic leader, because it helps, and we appreciate you. You want to give a shout out to all the volunteers? Can you remember them all?
Yeah, well, I know a few are on the phone. So of course, Byrne, and Hannah, her daughter, also was on the phone earlier. Ellen Kay came out. Kathy Jameson was on there. Yes, I think
Hannah
that's
Town was in. Well, yeah, you mentioned.
And then Sonia showed up in the morning to help Jim pick up one of the canoes, which is really actually very helpful. So yeah, thanks to everyone. This is a really great opportunity.
It's very cool.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, council, we are at item 8C on the agenda, and this is consideration of seeking voter approval of a bond issue to fund headworks replacement at WWTF at a special city meeting in November. Brian, you want to have a seat? And for those who don't know what the headworks replacement is, no shame in that. Why don't you just explain it to folks?
The headworks project is, it's essentially removing any solids that come through there. It's basically it'll be a bar screen to take away any rags or any of that debris. And then there's also a grit separator to take out any of the gravels or sands that come down through before it goes into the actual treatment center.
And I would, go ahead, Brian.
This is the critical point of the process. Is currently we have what they call a muffin monster down there, and it's basically a grinder that chops up any of the solids. And the problems that we're having now is people are using a lot of the wipes, and those wipes, they don't get broken into small pieces, they're into strings, and then they go into the digesters and reconstitute together as big balls, and they have basically destroyed 2 of our digesters. So in order to move ahead, we have to do this project. This is the first step, and it will probably solve 90% of their problems currently down there. They are constantly working on their pumps, and then at that point, we can do the repairs needed on our digesters, because as of right now, it would be just throwing money away that we don't have. So this is an important project, and it is the cornerstone of revitalizing that treatment plant down there that is so badly needed.
Gotcha. So it's really the first step in a series of steps.
There will be extra ones, but this is probably the most critical one.
And obviously necessary. Or with the price tag of $9.2 million, you wouldn't be here. Council, you have questions? Thank you for a thorough briefing in our packet. Any questions, Council? So there are a series of things that have to happen. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Shambell.
Just a curiosity, and I hate to bring this up. How does Barre Town fit into that? if at all?
They are, I guess, a client of ours essentially. They pay us both on the actual hydraulic flow that comes down, plus the biological load that comes in. And we are currently doing a study to adjust that agreement to make it more relevant and up to date, because I believe it was 2000, I think might be the last.
I saw 2000. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that's underway, which will hopefully, help us with the cost of everything.
This is part of the whole 20-year review of the plant, which is also long overdue. I mean, the plant was last reviewed way more than 20 years ago. And as part of that, Brian mentioned, we've identified this particular project as, we've sort of carved it out of the whole review because we know that this is the focal point of so many of our issues at the plant, to sort of fast track it. But as part of the whole 20-year review, as Brian mentioned, one of those things is the rate study, to evaluate how to better adjust
The rate study and review of the intermunicipal agreement.
Yeah.
So that it becomes, fair for both communities.
So because this is an enterprise fund, obviously these improvements, this $9.2 million and the associated bond payments will be built into the rate that is paid by the user, whether that user lives in the city or that user lives in the town, they'll be paying for it. Is that correct?
The users in the town are controlled by that intermunicipal agreement.
Do we have any direct bill? We don't have any direct bill
We don't have any
customers?
direct bill to the town. It's not like.
So you'll
the water
review the
system-
municipal agreement and
Yes.
then incorporate, obviously,
In
the
that
overall.
agreement, it is incorporated with any of these updates that we do to the plant. The town is basically responsible for a certain percentage. I'd have to dig out that percentage, the number, but it's written into that agreement that they are responsible for the I think it's called first cost, a percentage of the first cost with replacements or upgrades to the wastewater plant.
And that agreement is
That
being
is-
reviewed
yes.
and adjusted
Yep.
accordingly. Councilor Spalding.
My question is maybe for this project, but also just in a more general sense. With the idea that we want to build more housing and with the idea that there are new developments happening in Berrytown that are going to be connected to town utilities, how will that be impacted by this kind of project? Are we going to be able to handle an increased load, if you will?
This project will probably not increase the load, but with the intermunicipal agreement, all that type of stuff will be taken into account to set the rates. And I think the two big biological users are the Creamery and Hood. And they are currently trying to do a pretreatment. They're under state to do a pretreatment permit, which when that becomes effective, that should decrease that load coming in, which will increase our capacities.
So, okay, so the first part that you answered was about rates, but our capacity right now isn't high enough
No, we have the capacity.
to add
On
more?
hydraulically, we do.
Okay,
The biological treatment is where we get, it's maxed out technically with the loads that we're getting from Berrytown.
because of those two large users. And then when we have these new developments, or even we've talked about adding housing here in our community, how is that going to impact this? Will we have enough capacity?
We should, yes. Most of the residential areas are usually more on the hydraulic side than the biological side. Those, the dairies and breweries and that type of thing have a lot of the organics that come into it, and that's what creates that load. On just the domestic sewers area, that's a lot more hydraulically than chemically. So we do have the capacity, and when everything is upgraded, there should be more than enough. That's taken in this report is future expansions And when we get the full 20-year evaluation, then we'll have, the next phase of the project will be, to adjust some other section of the wastewater plant to take into account more load and flow also.
So, and you had indicated that those two larger users are doing something for pretreatment?
Yeah,
And when is that going to be online?
I'm not sure. Last I heard from them, they were in the kind of information stage. They had set up some flumes to actually measure sampling points to measure what they have, what they're producing, and they need to get those numbers before they can actually design their treatment system. So the last information that we had is they were in that phase of their process of quantifying what they have to do first, so.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. Is it required for them to do that, or is this an option for them to do that? What if they
It's with the
decide not to
state.
do?
It's the
It
state's
is
doing it,
required with the
yes.
state.
Okay.
That was gonna be my point. It's a
Okay.
state guided process.
Okay, thank
So
you.
that's what the process they're into.
Okay,
And
Did you
thank you. Yep.
get what you needed?
Yep.
Yeah, it took me a while to get it. So what is our current, if we were to look at it from the point of view of good old domestic poop, what is our current capacity? Or how much of our capacity are we using if we take out the higher pH type waste?
I'd have to look at the numbers, but.
Just give me a guess. I'm not gonna hold
I'd
it to
say
you.
we were probably in the 50% range on a normal daily flow.
So in terms of our ability, once the pre-treatment regulations are fully in effect and they're pre-treating that higher load waste, which isn't higher load in terms of volume, it's just higher load in terms of composition. And it takes longer to treat it
Yes.
than it does domestic poop. So once those fully take effect, will be, if we were to throw around the number like, oh, we're at 60%, when we have different discussions at the council level in terms of our ability to grow, our neighbors' ability to grow, we'd probably be okay if we were throwing that number around.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and
I can double check the numbers.
yeah, I mean, that's the same number that it's consistent with everything that I've heard, over the years being involved in city government. And then what I've also heard is that in terms of our ability to treat and produce water, just drinking water, domestic water, we're also at roughly 50%. So in terms of capacity, if we're doing things right, we have much more sewer, domestic treatment and water capacity than actually we really need, given the open areas in the city and our ability to grow this. We likely couldn't grow it from 8,000 to 16,000. That's not practical. So, but that was a good question. Thank you. Yes.
I saw some mentions of some timing, but can you give us a sense of if this is approved in November, what the timeline to completion is?
We are pushing the engineers to get to final design and hopefully permitted and bidding for construction next spring.
So it would start in the spring, and then are we looking at 6 months of work, 12 months?
It's probably close to 12 months worth of work, but we might be able to put it online by, fall, depending on the contractor or that, but I think the engineer told me it's probably almost a 12-month construction timeframe.
We actually changed engineers because we wanted to expedite this and we weren't in agreement and alignment with the timelines that the prior engineering firm was working on.
They were overloaded.
Yeah.
As far as just their workload, so there was nothing with their quality of the work, but it was just their timeline to get it complete. We were able to save 6 months by switching to another one, so we prioritized that.
I'm sorry. Mr. Bruton, you had your hand up for a while.
I did, but I don't mind letting Sam go first if she wants. She may answer the question.
Thank you, Michael. So my question is, as far as I understand it, we charge commercial customers the same rate, whether they are within the city limits or outside the city limits. But I know that some municipalities charge a higher rate for commercial customers that are outside city limits. But is that not possible for us?
I believe they are going to be looking into that on that, the study for the rates in intermunicipal agreement upgrades.
Thank you.
Mr. Booton?
She did not answer my question, but she did tee me up for what I wanted to ask. One, do you have access to the original MOUs with the fire districts when we took them over years and years ago? Because you might want to check into that, because there actually might be stipulations in that regarding charging extra. Because we solicited the Barre Town folks, if I recall. I don't remember the name of the fire districts. We're talking back in the 90s. Or maybe even before then. And the other thing that I just want to warn folks on, as we're talking about increasing rates on Barre Town, they have a tendency to, when they don't like something, they go away. And that could have a negative impact on our fund balance, or not fund balance, but the funds there. I mean, it's not overly surprising to see if Barre Town get upset and then start digging wells. Just something to be think about.
Well, we're actually, so the contracts that Brian was referring to, Mr. Booton, are domestic, well, not even domestic and commercial wastewater treatment contracts. We are looking at the water contracts as well, and we'll be doing that. But this specific question goes to commercial and domestic waste, which we review those. I mean, since we did a deep dive, it's been years, probably 20.
Yeah, I think.
But we have adjusted those. We have adjusted those rates.
Rates have been adjusted.
Have been adjusted on a continuous basis. So this isn't anything. You know, we're not stepping outside of any existing agreements, and you know, a periodic adjustment of the rates is nothing that would take anyone by surprise.
Yeah, no, I know staff isn't doing that, but the council is talking about changing it so that Barre Town gets charged more. And I just want to just say you may want to double check into those old MOUs when we solicited their business.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask? Oh, oops, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Do you think it would be effective to have a public service campaign to tell people to stop flushing wipes and things of that nature?
There is, the state already does one, and we had, I think,
We did one, yeah.
On the website at one time.
We were doing one, when we were doing the monthly Times Argus ads, which I have to get back to, we did one there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll probably just start taking pictures of what they pull out of the pumps and put that on Facebook. That's gonna do it.
Being 100% transparent.
That's a great idea.
I never knew that we weren't supposed to flush wipes or anything until I went to the wastewater treatment facility. I believe it was 2 years ago.
They're not flushable even if they say they're flushable.
No, so I think it might be really helpful for us to put back out into the community in that way, whether it be our Facebook, to really let people know that, hey, you guys are actually damaging the wastewater treatment facility plant. And maybe we could save some of that wear and tear just by using social media and some other outlets.
Well, we could take a picture of the giant wipe ball. We could place Nicholas next to it for, you know, for reference. To get some.
And maybe that's a public service announcement that we can get and really have some media coverage on board with. Really sound that alarm. I mean, it's important, and we joke around about it, but we're wasting millions of dollars because we're not, to me, I don't feel like we're communicating enough to our community to say, hey, stop flushing this stuff. Because I've been on council almost 3 years at this point, and until really I took that wastewater treatment facility tour, I just thought, oh, we just flush pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm. No, that's, well, we do joke about it, but no, I mean, we all take it seriously, and I think Nicholas's suggestion to make people more aware, probably by social media, because not everyone gets, you know, a water and sewer bill.
Right.
So it probably wouldn't be a bad idea as part of this, you know, anytime we, obviously, $9.2 million project, we're going to be talking about it a little bit. it wouldn't be a bad idea to try to work that awareness into every discussion we have and every media discussion we have. Councilor Spaulding?
So I have two questions. The study that you're talking about that hasn't been done for over 24 years, when can we expect that to be completed?
I would have to double check on the exact date, but I believe this winter sometime, but they're collecting all the user data from Barre Town at this point in their study.
Okay. And my follow-up question, I just want to clarify, and on the heels of what Mr. Booton was saying, if the $9 million bond is going to go on our ballot for the city of Barre to approve, that means we're paying for it, right? And you, Mayor, were suggesting that maybe it was the enterprise fund and that it would go out, but it sounds like that's not the case. So the city of Barre is paying for this. And
That is the case, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's paid for by the end users. There are different types of end users. Some are direct bill. I mean, you get it, in the city, you have a water and a sewer bill.
right.
Obviously, the users, the $9.2 million bond payments, with Barre Town, we have a different agreement, which we're reevaluating now.
Right. But I think to
My
my
position
point-
on that is it's got to be fair to everybody. So if we break down X number of users in the town and we break down X number of users in the city, proportionately, everyone should be paying the same.
But is this going to be included on city water and sewer bills or sewer bills as an increase if we approve this $9 million bond, or is it then spread out across all users? Because that's where it's not clear to me.
So I believe this is under all users, and Don's gonna be here next week on a budget, but basically if it's a cost associated with the plant, it's paid through the enterprise fund, and so the cost of the bond would be built into whatever rate setting we do next year, is my
And I
understanding.
believe I think it's like 28% of, like, that $9 million bill will be charged to Barre Town. That intermunicipal agreement has those stipulations in it that any improvements we do, the 9.6, that they pay, I think it's 28, I'd have to think, but it's written in there that they have to pay that much for that project.
And if I could just clarify, it's the total projects, 9.2, the bond is 7.6, because part of it is engineering, that's paid through a state revolving loan fund. So the bond itself is for the construction at 7.6.
Okay.
And I think I understand your question and what you're getting at, and I agree with you, that it needs to be fair, so no matter how our neighbors are charged, we have to be able to to justify it through a basic premise of fairness. So that if we were to break down both volume, because it's a different formula, it's volume and it's also pH levels. So what are we processing versus how much are we processing?
And the intermunicipal agreement does have two separate rates for the town, one for hydraulically for flow and one for the biological treatment.
And the biological treatment is much, much higher. It's a much higher rate, but we can trace that higher pH waste to specific commercial users, so that's easy enough. But what's important to me is when we evaluate and adjust the municipal agreement, even though waste doesn't quite work this way, if I look at what it is costing a homeowner in the town to process 1 gallon of household waste, that needs to approximate what it is costing someone in the city. And if that isn't the case, then it's not quite fair. So I think we're on the same page. So council, if you're so inclined, I do need, I'm sorry, Ellen Kay?
I hope there will be a mechanism for really forward-looking decision-making about the fairness. Keeping in mind these facts, that the median income in Barre Town per household is around 80,000. The median income in Barre City is in the 50s. The poverty rate in Barre Town is about 5%, and the poverty in Barre City is 25%. So I would really like to see a real study on how to make these rates fair. I assume that stormwater runoff and street runoff is part of what gets treated. Is that correct?
No.
It's not
Okay,
supposed
you're only talking sewer pipes at this point. Is that what we're talking about? Okay. But I'd like to see a progressive, meaning not regressive, system of how we do this with our neighbors. Considering that we have very different economic realities between the two municipalities.
I can't guarantee that that will happen because I'm not sure what the Public Service Board, what the regulations are. These are user fees, much like registering a vehicle at the Department of Motor Vehicles. There's no consideration for one's income. It's not an income tax, it's a user fee. So I can't guarantee, I understand what you're saying, Ellen. I can't guarantee it.
Yeah, and we also assume all of the risk. So the folks living by the treatment plant, when it doesn't function properly, when there's effluent, when all of that happens, we're assuming all of the risk. So I just think it needs to be very balanced in a different kind of way. So I'm hoping that there are ways to do that. And I hope that the council and the department and whoever regulates it will be looking into that seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. So council, if you're, I believe that's everyone. So if you're so inclined, the motion would be to approve Resolution 2024-16, which is the necessity resolution for the Headworks bond, approve the warning for the bond vote to present to the voters, and set the public information meeting on the bond question for Monday, October 28th, 2024. And I think we picked that date. It is a Monday.
Yes.
Because the consultant was
Yeah.
not available at other times. So that will be a Monday. So that will be a hearing on a Monday, not a Tuesday. Just wanted to point that out. Motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Can I ask one more question?
Of course you can.
So under the estimated budget worksheet, under general requirements, it says 429,000, but there's no itemization of what that is. Could someone explain what that 429,000 entails?
Where are you, Counselor?
On the estimated, it's attachment
And
1,
estimated
estimated
construction
construction cost, estimated budget worksheet, the very top row says general requirements. There's no itemization and it says 429,000.
I don't have it, Brian. Do you
I
know?
would, without asking the consultant, when they say general requirements, I would imagine that means the administration of the construction contract and funding mechanism for it.
Say that in English so I can understand
Oh,
it.
sorry, actually, just found a note at the bottom, the little footnotey thingy at the bottom, number 2, says the general requirements are based on 10% of the
The
total.
contingency.
Okay, so that's a contingency? Yes?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
It could be a contingency. It could be what is sometimes referred to as contractor's markup, sometimes for contract administration. So I'm not sure it's a contingency because a lot of times, and Angie, thanks for helping, because you see a lot of construction contracts too, and a lot of times it's just the contractor will bid certain things at their cost, and then there's a 10% markup, so to speak.
Well, so I'm gonna push back on that because this says total project cost summary, and the first bullet on page 2 says a 15% construction contingency is shown. So I don't think that's a contingency.
Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, it could very well be.
What the mayor said.
It's based on 10% of the total, but still, the question hasn't been answered. What is it? Can someone answer that?
I can't.
Mr.
would
Mayor?
have to check with the consultant.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr.
Yes.
McKenzie.
That general requirements, wait, I'm sorry. The general requirements basically is an allowance for what is called general conditions in the specifications. That's generally where a contractor will put a lot of the administrative costs for running the project. Anything from permits that they have to get to any number of just direct expenses, including office staff, project administration, that don't fit into any of the other payment categories. It's not a contingency. It's not a profit item per se. It's in the standard index of special conditions. There's a section called general conditions, and that's a direct cost allowance for that. At this point in stage, at this point in time, what you're looking at from the consultant is their best estimate of what the cost of individual components of the project will be. But in the final analysis, it's however or whatever each individual contractor sees, and ultimately the winning contractor, and how that particular contractor allocates costs within their bid and within their contract document. And often they're similar between contractors, but not always. Contractors use different strategies for cost accounting their projects. And as I always said, even when I worked at Du Bois and King for 37 years, it doesn't make any difference what the engineer's estimate is. It's what the low bid is. So this is the Aldrich and Elliott's cost estimate is just that. It's an estimate. Best representation of what a likely bid would come in at, but you're always at the mercy of the bidding phase. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. So there was a motion, there was a second. Is there any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you very much. That was unanimous, so I don't need the roll call.
And I'm passing around the signatures for the resolution and the warning.
Okay, thank you very much. So make sure you sign that, councilors, before you leave. And I don't think we need it right away, but if you could remember next time you're in City Hall, councilors, if you could stop by and sign it, that would be great.
We can do.
Present for the vote, we'd appreciate that. Council, we're at item 8D on the agenda. This is to move the annual city meeting, town meeting day to May 13th, 2025. There was a thorough briefing from the council, from the manager rather, regarding this issue. Would anyone care to make a motion to start the discussion? Thank you.
Second and point of discussion.
Seconded, and yes.
I would just like to add that in addition to what was laid out in the memo about the benefits from a budgetary perspective of this move, we also saw higher voter turnout last town meeting day than we have seen in at least my time on the council. So not only did it, was it the right move financially, it also increased voter turnout here in Barre City's town meeting day.
Absolutely. Any other discussion on this matter?
When you say town meeting day, do you mean in May, the vote in May?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So when we voted in May last time.
The new town meeting day.
Yes, the new town meeting day had higher voter participation than any of the March ones, at least as long as I've been here since 2019.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. Council, we're at item 8E on the agenda. This is to approve a $250,000 ARPA allocation to create a housing revolving loan fund / trust.
Right. So last spring, I think the city council decided they were interested in a housing revolving loan fund. And I believe even at that point, they were talking about home repairs. They punted that to the housing task force, had come up with some ideas. And then I was here a few months ago and presented
some initial ideas. There were discussions and questions, and we decided to try to answer some of those questions and then come back to the council. So that's where we are today. Down Street's homeownership director was going to be with us tonight, but she is terribly ill. So you just have me again, but I think I have a little bit more information and should be able to answer the same questions that came up last time, maybe not new ones. And you should have before you just a rough one-pager of what the revolving loan fund is proposed to look like, and it's based on Down Street's Green Mountain Home Repair loan program that we currently offer that is federally funded through community block grant money that goes through the state and then is allocated to Down Street. It's well designed, it's relatively regimented. We've been offering it for a number of years. And so this basically takes that program and extends it to a higher income limit. Because the Green Mountain Home Repair loan is for folks at 80% of area median income and below. This one goes up to 120% of area median income. Also, through the Green Mountain Home Repair loan program, we provide grants and silent loans. I think aside from deferred loans specific to properties that need improvements prior to a home sale, the Housing Task Force and the council was really comfortable with only having amortized loans with the Barre City revolving loan fund. And then just a reminder that the fees are on the back or the second page. If the borrower is accessing both the Green Mountain Home Repair Fund and the Barre City revolving loan fund, all the fees are covered by another source, but all of the interest goes back into all of the interest on what is borrowed from the Barre City revolving loan fund goes back into that fund. If the borrower doesn't qualify to access the Green Mountain Home Repair Fund, then the fees are assessed as described. And then again, it is the city's loan fund. Downstream is happy to do whatever makes sense as long as it's not predatory. And what we're recommending is what we, based on our experience, think will be useful to the city of Barre and its residents.
Questions? Yes.
So assuming this gets approved tonight, the next steps are going to look like Down Street putting together like an application process for this and...
Yep, so we already have all of that in place for the Green Mountain Home Repair Fund. So there would just be a few extra, the income would go up to 120% of AMI. You'd have to be a Barre City resident. So there'd just be a few components like that. And then we would model it as closely as possible to the Green Mountain Home Repair Fund, just because that has been, I mean, it's a federal program. It's delivered statewide. And so it's all the pieces are there already. And then we describe a little bit at the end, proposed reporting requirements. As long as they're not undue, we're happy to add additions to that.
So area median income currently, you'd use Washington County?
We use Washington County.
Which is 3352, like 3,400, something like that.
For a family of four, it's like 90,000 and some change.
That high?
100% area median
For
income.
single. So it's
Single's close to 80.
Yeah, I didn't bring those. I think I did have
that's
those numbers
okay.
last time. Yeah, but
So family of four would be 90,000.
roughly.
Roughly. So the only thing you know what I'm going to bring up is the rates, because this is a document that we can amend, I guess, but we won't. It will exist in perpetuity. I absolutely agree with the premise that, so the two big concerns that I have, the purpose of the fund was to make funds available. For example, if there's someone who doesn't have a very high income and they want to sell their home, they want to make other arrangements, but they need 20,000 in repairs, we can help them if they don't. And I think that's a very good thing, because they would fix up their home would qualify for financing on the secondary market for a new buyer to come in, and new family, and buy that home. I love that. But the purpose of the fund was to make funds available to those who are for lack of a better word, sort of locked out of the traditional market for whatever reason. It might be credit, it might be income, it could be debt to income ratio, it could be a lot of things. And I believe that's a good thing. But we don't have any mechanism for someone making $75,000 a year to come and say, I'm going to go here, because they're just easier to deal with than a traditional bank. And so I have, I had a little bit of concern. I know the committee felt that asking someone for a denial letter from a bank might be somewhat traumatic or whatever, but there's only 250,000 in this fund, and if you start doing, that's not very many $20,000 loans. It's not as impactful as I'd like to see it. So that was my one concern, and I hope, and I'm not going to derail the process tonight, but I just hope there's more consideration given, or more questioning of a borrower than just saying, well, could you go to a traditional bank? No, I can't. Well, and you're looking at their ratios saying, you sure look like you could go to I just want to make sure the folks who are lower income and who are locked out of the, for lack of a better word, locked out of a traditional financing model, have the ability, and it doesn't get eaten up by folks who, the folks who take the 10 COVID kits when they only need 5. So I want to make sure that doesn't happen. Yes.
One comment for that might be helpful. Tess Taylor, Chair of the Housing Task Force. I think one of the things that we were talking about is the missing middle in our discussions with the Housing Task Force. So you've got considerations for people who are very low end, and then, of course, people who are not. But I think it was like this consideration, raising it was for this consideration of what we call the missing middle. So somebody, seems like, well, they're making good money, but, there still is a lot of, situations where people are strapped because they're not making a lot of money and they're not making no money, but it's, everything is a struggle, or things have become a struggle. So I think that was part of the consideration here.
And I don't agree with that, disagree with that at all. But again, when we were having the original discussion, this model was built around folks who couldn't access could not access traditional financing. And that's all. It's more a comment than anything else. As we administer the fund, Angie, I just hope that it's a little bit more than a question. And so that we're helping exactly those people that you just described, Tess.
I did ask our director of homeownership about this.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not going to put in any requirement or suggest it, but it's just a concern I have. And then the second is just the rates of interest, because rates of interest, they change. We had prime was 3.25. Oh, those were the days, weren't they? And now prime, because of the, a recent reduction by the feds of 50 basis points, prime is at 8. And these start at 4%. So I guess my comment is and I looked at, I took a $10,000 and $20,000 loan, and I said, okay, well, what is it at 4? What is it at 8? And because it's not a long, it didn't really make that much of a difference, but I couldn't help but think, okay, but if we charge folks with household incomes over 100% of AMI, which is 90 grand, if we charge them prime, and as you know, Angie, prime is the interest rate that the best borrowers, the ones with the 750 credit scores, they pay prime. And I was thinking, are we being, I'm all over access, but are we being a little too generous with interest rates when, bumping someone with an income of 30% AMI or below, bumping that from 1% to say 4%, it would make a minuscule difference in the payment, but it would enable the fund to continue that much longer. And my biggest concern is we don't look at this You know, if rates were at 3.25, that's where we started this discussion. So these rates were probably appropriate when prime was 3.25, but now prime is 8. So should we use a prime plus or a prime minus model to say if you're 30% AMI or below, it's prime less 4?
We will defer to the council.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. Oh, you were first.
I would just speak to 2 points on that. One, if we were going to change the way the rates are expressed in this, it would have to be a flexible with referral to something else, because as you were saying, otherwise we're stuck revising this every 6 months or whenever the Fed changes the rates, and that doesn't feel like these are going to be really good rates sometimes, and potentially other times they're going to be a little higher than banks if we leave them as fixed numbers. And to speak to your point about growing this fund or recouping money into this fund, I would hope that the way we would grow this fund is by seeking additional outside funding. If we were able to secure, and I don't know what that looks like, right? We got it from ARPA funding this time. There could certainly be other areas where we could vote forward another $50,000 at points in the future, or seek grants or things like that to grow this fund. I don't necessarily see growth in this fund or a priority for growth in this fund coming from the interest rates themselves. I see those as a guarantor of getting the loans back, of being a good lender, like following best practices necessarily. I'm sorry?
Increasing the grand list, you know, like how that benefits the city in other ways.
Yeah, we are putting percentages on the loan because we are still assuming some risk as that, but I don't necessarily see this as a gain endeavor for the city. I think the gain for the city is promoting better housing.
Mm-hmm. And I would agree, Councilor Stockwell.
I just want to say we need to make it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did have my hand up. Just wanted to say we need to make it possible for people who are in the middle or on the lower end to succeed. And by keeping the interest rates low and making it relatively easy for them to apply to a place that has a really, really good record, we're making it more possible for people in Barre to maintain their homes and to keep them valuable, and therefore probably to keep them in Barre.
Yeah, understood. Yes.
So to the mayor's point, how do we determine and make sure that the people that are applying are the people that really qualify for this loan? How do we determine that?
So like any loan product, there are thresholds. You know, I'm going to apply, and if I meet the thresholds, then I'm able to access the loan. We are a nonprofit housing provider. It is, I cannot think of a single occurrence where someone came in through the homeownership center and was just way over income, or the situation. I mean, we don't occur to people unless they really need help. And even when we are, aggressively marketing programs, it's still a lot of effort even to get people through the door. So I would be surprised. And our homeownership center, I mean, they're very accustomed to dealing with folks who are unbanked. If somebody came in at 120% of area median income with the ability to take on a ton of debt, they would question that. I think that would become a conversation. And I can double check with Cheryl to find out if there is some like upper threshold or some way to say, oh, you don't, it doesn't make sense for you to do this. But my guess is, in an effort to folks that you're wanting to catch, that's just there. And we can, you'll be getting reports. I think we just said quarterly. And if there are any real concerns from the city, I'm happy to come back and talk through the loans that we have.
Amy Galford?
I'm sorry if I missed this. How does it work for selection if you get more applicants than can receive it? Like, let's say this opens up and suddenly 30 people apply and $20,000 easily. Most houses in the city could probably make use of $20,000. Like, what happens? Is there a ranking process to pick the winners?
It would be first come, first serve. I will say we offer the Green Mountain Home Repair Loan. We'll probably do 20 of those this year. And that that is a little more cumbersome, but it also is grants and silent loans, like, and that is available in Berry City already. So I'm not expecting, even with the aggressive marketing push that I know the city's going to put out, that we'll get a flood of applicants.
Understood.
And we have been promoting the our loan fund pretty aggressively, especially since the flooding. We've actually upped the grant allowance for folks who've experienced flooding.
So I think you've heard and answered our concerns regarding, qualifications. So I think we've got a higher comfort level with that. But that still doesn't address, to your point, Councilor Guston saying, well, is there some other measurement? And, let's face it, everything pretty much goes off prime. So should we, rather than say 1, 2, 3, 4, and again, remembering that when we first conceived of this document, when we saw the first draft, interest rates were less than half of what they are now. So I realize it's, the issue certainly, I mean, if you look at the flood mitigation plans that the city has, we just looked at a $9 million project. I suspect we may be able to grow it by either finding additional funding or perhaps grow it, $20,000, $25,000 a year with a line item in the budget and try to help folks. And I would agree with doing that. But if you brought the average interest rates to 5% a year, that grows it by 12,000, based on the amount of money we have working. If the average interest rate was 5%, that would grow the fund by $12,500 a year, virtually double it, over 10 years. So, well, it wouldn't double it over 10, it would take longer. But I guess I'm concerned that by setting rates too low and not having it tied to prime, which, moves, well, we haven't seen it move ever. When the Fed went crazy, and I mean 11 times, and I'm like, what are you doing? That was a bit of a shocker, and now it's taken them, 6 months to reduce it by 50 basis points. But at least then we won't have to revisit the document. If prime goes back to 3%, well, we'd be charging folks on this end more than prime, and people would be saying, hey, you're kind of gouging. So I'm wondering if maybe we should index it, raise these rates, only because I did look at the payment, and Tess, I hear you, that sometimes, $10 is a lot of money to someone who is barely getting by, $10 a month. I'm not unmindful of that, but I'm just hoping that, by raising the interest rates a bit, we get a little bit of money from all sources, that's all. Councilor Wozniak.
I personally am not interested in pinching pennies or attempting to bring in more revenue from folks who are at between 30 and 100% or 120% of AMI. I think the purpose of this program, as was discussed earlier, is to give folks a different option, a different opportunity than what is regularly available to them through the banking system. And I think that if you want someone to not be generous, go to the bank. If the purpose of a program is to help people, have the government do it. And that's how I'm looking at this program, is this is a program that is designed to help people, that is designed to give them a low barrier, low interest loan to get themselves out of a situation that they do not want to be in anymore. So personally, I would rather have folks be able to access this money relatively easily at low interest rates and perhaps have to adjust the rules every few years than try to continue to pinch pennies out of people who do not have them.
Understood.
So I will make a motion to approve. Oh, I was so close. I was so close.
I'm sorry.
Second.
Councilor Stockwell?
Second, I was just gonna mention that there's the Semperbond annuity, and there's the Brusa Fund, and there's the Keith. Anyway, I think I second Teddy's motion.
Okay, motion is made and seconded.
May I have
Oh.
one point of discussion
Yes.
before we, I think we're all set tonight, but I would just be curious if part of our quarterly reports going forward could include some reflection on the interest rates and where you see them working with the program, whether you think that there should be some adjustment and indexing to prime or anything like that going forward. I think we're set for now, but I would be curious to hear what that looks like.
Or an actual interest rate review as part of the quarterly report where your staff looks at the rates and makes a recommendation to the council. So that be actually part of a quarterly report where you say, leave them alone, increase them, decrease them.
Yeah, it might be worthwhile, since this is a new product in general, to come back in, 3 or 6 months and say, this is what's working, this isn't what's working. If it doesn't move, we should probably.
Well, it's going to take it a while to kind of get off the ground. So why don't we set a date for 6 months, give or take, instead of 3? Unless it's gangbusters and you feel you need to come back in 3. So there's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed, that motion was unanimous, so that we don't need the roll call. We're at item 8F on the agenda. That is discussion of the flood resiliency plan.
Thank you both.
Councilors Wazazak and Guston. And I knew there was something I was supposed to do yesterday, and it was respond to you, and I did not.
I was gonna catch you.
I didn't respond to Councilor Guston either, so we're both guilty. We're both guilty.
I was gonna catch you after the meeting and
Thank
sit down
you.
with a calendar.
And thank you for being gracious, because I should have returned that email.
So there's no presentation with this agenda item. The manager had asked if we wanted to speak about it briefly, and I said yes, because I wanted to just sort of publicly state to folks listening and to other counselors that this work is very much continuing in earnest, that we are receiving feedback from folks by email, from being stopped on the street, from meeting with other counselors. The city manager is setting up a sort of roundtable conversation for us with key members of city staff. I had a really good long meeting with Tess Taylor yesterday. We talked about a lot of ideas back and forth for a while, and then sat down yesterday and pinned down planning for public forums, and the sort of format and conversation around public forums to gain feedback onto the plan. The entire plan has been now rewritten per council's previous feedback. Each identified project under the goal now includes identified partners to carry out that goal, the city's role in carrying out that goal, any progress made to date, and an area identifying next steps for that project. And right now, some of them say none, right? Or no, nothing yet. But the idea is that this will continue to update and move forward. There's also now the future projects section, which all of the rivers projects that did not make that, 65 project list, that did not make the top 10 are going into there. And there's also the completed project section, which now we can tick off another one tonight, knowing that we filed that special projects coordinator, because that was part of the plan. So we are still on track for adoption. I would peg this at late October, based on some of the conversations I had with Tess about the public forums, and would continue to look forward to any and all feedback from anyone who wants to reach out to either myself or Councilor Wazazak about whether you are taking a look at the actual plan as it has been included in previous council packets, whether you just have general thoughts about the things the city should be doing to address flooding. We would very much welcome that. We have a few more drop-in hour dates this week, Wednesday and Friday, 8 to 9 at Espresso Bueno, and then Thursday at the Kitty Corner Cafe, 8 to 9. And of course, we'll happily meet off hours as well if that's a better fit for folks, but those are, you can be guaranteed to come and find one or both of us there. And Councilor Wazazak, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I would just add that this, this project has come together in phases, and over the past couple of weeks, as this has been very much in a public engagement and information gathering phase, Councilor Guston has been doing the lion's share of the work, so I just want to recognize and appreciate that.
Thank you.
Are there
Any questions, council?
questions, feedback, anything?
Okay, then we'll move on to item 9, upcoming Business, I apologize, it was quite a busy week last week, but I wanted to prepare some numbers. I think it was Councilor Stockwell who asked some questions about Prospect Heights and how the city would go about funding that project. So right now, there are two different scenarios, none of them bad. The scenario A is that we are not successful with the EPA grant and we do not receive the remaining $3 million. The project would only be 50% funded. Again, none of them are horrible scenarios, and obviously the wonderful scenario would be we are successful with the EPA grant and the project would be fully funded, all of the construction costs. But what it's going to do is just put something together to show the council what those two scenarios would look like, and most importantly, what at different levels of residences, because we don't know. Right now, we're going through the due diligence phase, the pre-engineering, where they're looking at the land, looking at the contours and saying, well, looking at the wetlands and defining how many homes you could fit on that parcel of land. And we've heard estimates that range anywhere from 75 to 125. So I'll show the council, what the future of the city, and that's where it's a bit of a game changer, at an assessment of $200,000 per residence. It could be upwards of $750,000 of property taxes. Now that's in total, so obviously half would be for the school and half would be for the municipality. But imagine when we sit here talking about how do we put $25,000 into a revolving loan fund and find that money. Imagine what roughly $500,000 or so to the municipal fund would do to the city. So I'll define those. I'll have a good report for you next week that I can give you, and we'll go through that quickly. We still have we've kicked the water discussion a bit down the road until we get these reports back, because they're taking that deep dive into both water and wastewater. So we'll be doing that. And also, folks, I think it's been a little while since we've really focused on the north end and what is possible there. So I'd really like to see us kind of, we've got a lot of things in a really good place. You're doing good work on the flood resiliency plan, so I feel good about where those projects are going. I don't feel really good, and it's not a reflection on the council, probably more a reflection on me. I don't feel very good about where we are with the north end and the discussions that we've been having. So I'd like to just maybe start that with a neighborhood meeting in the north end and take the pulse of how people are feeling and see if we could re-engage the governor and perhaps others. Is that okay? And if there's anything else that you would like on the agenda, yes.
I would be fine to have a conversation with the neighborhood, the North End neighborhood. I think if you're going to have a meeting in the North End, I think you should maybe do a Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, because there are people who are being impacted in other wards. And although, it may feel like our North End neighbors are being more, I guess, being impacted more heavily, maybe, but I think for someone who is getting flooded every single time it rains in Courier Park, that's a concern as well. They are just as upset about frequent rain events and flooding as someone whose house is being flooded every time it rains in the North End. So I want to make sure that I understand, and I agree that we need to have neighborhood meetings, but I don't think we should just limit it to the North End.
We don't have to.
So I would encourage us to think about Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3. And I know there are people all over the city. We've seen it in the applications for Barre Community Relief Fund. They're everywhere in the city. And we need to recognize that there are people who are struggling with flooding everywhere. With that being said, I also would like to talk about, I read a really interesting article in the New York Times about how they're turning very large office buildings into apartments. And it's actually a couple of years old. The article's a couple of years old. And I read it because I was hoping for some really great nuggets of wisdom in there. It really wasn't very helpful for us because we don't have large high rises and office buildings here.
Right.
But I would hope that we could actually take some of the initiative and outside the box thinking that they're using to be able to talk about how we can create more housing in our downtown with some infill. So it was a great article. I'm happy to send it to you guys if you need to. And then the last thing, based on my conversation, I had a great conversation with Dave Rubel the other day about the BADC, and he was able to, shed some light on some things that I didn't realize. But I guess what I would want to do in the same vein as a neighborhood meeting is invite our, people in who are part of our downtown, who are part of the, the economic drivers in our community, to see if they could come in and give us some feedback as well. How are they feeling about the organization BADC, Barre Partnership, and how can we make sure that our investment in these organizations is getting a good return?
Okay, anyone else? Okay, then we will move to roundtable. Councilor Stockwell. Oh, did we lose her?
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
In light of the conversation we had last time we had council meeting, I've been walking on the bike path and I've walked from Bridge Street to Fairview. And I have to say, I didn't see any needles. I really didn't see any litter. It just seemed like a really nice place. People were there walking their dogs, kids were running for high school. So it just seemed like this isn't a place that seems very troubled to me. It seemed like an excellent place and a good resource for Barre City. And with that, I'll pass.
Councilor Chambel.
I'll pass.
Councilor Deering.
Man, I'm pumped about sports. ABA basketball, hockey season is upon us just about. I know it's still football season. I just got a sneak peek at Spalding High School's schedule for girls and boys. Wednesdays and Saturdays at the BOR, that's where you'll find me. I'll end with that.
Very cool. Councilor Guston.
There's going to be a great forum this coming Thursday evening, 5:30 p.m. at the Labor Hall, hosted by the Vermont Natural Resources Council around long-term flood resiliency regionally. I'm going to be part of that panel talking about some of the things that we're talking about doing here in the city and within that flood plan. So I would encourage folks to come out and hear. It's going to be, I think, a really interesting mix of river scientists, people thinking about policy, and so on. So it should be a really good conversation. That's this Thursday at the Labor Hall. And I'm also super excited for the Granite Museum's open house on Saturday. The Granite Museum does not get enough love. It's a phenomenal institution, and I'm excited to go to their open house.
Thank you. Councilor Wassenczak.
Pass.
Councilor Spalding.
Well, the first thing I want to do is thank everyone for voting, coming out to vote for the budget. I'm super excited that we finally have a school budget, and it's just in time to start planning for next year's budget. So I appreciate that. And I was able to go to to see a comedian at the Opera House, and I just, talking about another place that doesn't get enough love. It is an amazing building, and if you get an opportunity to go to any kind of event there, it's just outstanding and a treasure in our community, and I would just encourage people to take advantage whenever they can.
Thank you. So, been spending a lot of time lately with the administration and folks in the legislature talking about housing. It's frustrating, the cost of housing. One thing that I've reiterated to both the administration and folks in the legislature that, and one thing that I'll be promoting, until we can do something meaningful to buy down the upfront cost of building a housing unit, whether it's a $50,000 grant, whether it's literally foregoing revenue for 10 years and making that investment in your community. And I guess the question that I asked them is, if you could just drop 100 housing units on the city of Barre today, but the catch was that you couldn't collect property taxes on them for 10 years, would you do it? And unanimously, that answer is yes. So that will be sort of part of my focus as we go forward. I want to see something happen and give Berry City an advantage that no other municipality has. And the best I can come up with is some sort of aggressive upfront grant so that we are making housing more accessible for that missing middle that Tess was talking about. So we'll be having a lot more discussions about that. So with that, council, we have an executive session regarding real estate. I am conflicted out of this discussion, so I'll preside over the vote to go into executive session, but I will not be attending. And Councilor Stockwell, if you'd be so kind as to adjourn the council, I would appreciate it. So there is, I would need a motion for findings, council?
So moved.
Second.
There is motion and a second for findings. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed, that motion was unanimous. And now I need a motion to go into executive session. As I said, I will not be attending.
I move that we go into executive session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion is carried unanimously,
Clear to invite the manager.
noting that I did not participate in either vote.
We're just assuming that.
And we're inviting.
And
in the
David,
city
David, no
Wonderful.
action,
We're
so just FYI, David, no action.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Good night.
Good night.
Mr. Mayor.
I think I have the thingies. I have CC system.
Thanks, Cheryl.
right. I will make the motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
Sam, you're muted.
Oh,
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Who's telling?
Okay.
I'm writing it down.
Thank you, Sam.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Sam.
Take care.
Good
Bye.
night,
Thank you.
Mel. Good night, Dave. Good night, Tony. Good night, John Boy. Good night, Al.